My name is Tom Castley. I'm the Vice President of EMEA for Xactly Corporation, and I have the absolute pleasure this afternoon of announcing Project Unite on behalf of ourselves, DocuSign, SteelBrick and SpringCM, who are the founding partners of the Project Unite initiative. And over the next 20-25 minutes, I'd like to kind of explain to you, if you will, kind of the thought process behind where this came from and why we think it's so innovative, and why in kind of the early stage conversations we've had with our existing customers where we've got joint customers, they're excited about its potential, and also within the delivery organizations, the consulting firms out there, again, there's a lot of positive feedback. I will try and take no more than 20 minutes, hoping that there's like 5 minutes of questions at the end, okay? So keep me honest. So what we see from our perspective as ISVs, we're nearly always implemented post a CRM deployment. So think of if CRM is like, or Salesforce is like petrol to a car, the car is your business, you need gas or petrol in it to make it run. The founding partners of Project Unite are other components of that. Okay, so like Xactly would be the steering wheel, for example. SpringCM would be the highway code. It's kind of the, helps you to get through the rules and regulations. DocuSign is, the piece of paper, your driving license, to make sure you've got the right to drive. And SteelBrick, well, they kind of built the car for you, okay? And what we see with any technology project, actually any project that happens, you have this typical adoption curve. There are challenges post-deployment after the initial excitement has kind of gone through of kind of this trough of disillusionment. And the timing of you as customers or as implementers to try and negate this gap, to reduce this as much as possible, is a real challenge. And clearly, the ISV community, and the reason why it's such a success and why there's nearly 2,800 vendors out there, is because you all have recognized, actually, if we keep expanding the platform, we'll drive that adoption, we'll drive the overall return on investment, and ultimately generate a better business success. Okay. However, in that, and given the amount of choice that exists, we hear, and certainly when I'm talking to companies, they tell me kind of some of these things. So for example, of the 2,800 ISVs out there, other than kind of the reviews that you get on the App Exchange that might be glowing or give you some warnings in different areas, which ones kind of are the best for us in our industry? Given our size today, will we outgrow it next year if we're on if we're in a mega growth phase? Do they operate in other countries? Do we have any legal ramifications? And kind of all of that knowledge and all of that expertise, you kind of have to self-serve or go and meet multiple different vendors the whole time and go through a complex procurement process, which kind of inhibits your ability to run your businesses. Something else that comes up is, just because they're on the Salesforce ecosystem, does that necessarily mean they work well together? As companies, are they aligned? Are there multiple ways of implementing this first solution that you've chosen? And are there some pitfalls of doing it one way versus another when you buy the next ISV application? It's the old Stephen Covey comment, start with the end in mind. Well, sometimes you might not know where the end is, and you kind of need some help and guidance in terms of pulling that together. We often get asked as well, we're looking at you. Have you ever worked with SteelBrick? Have you ever worked with New Voice Media? Have you ever worked with an SAP ERP backend? A lot of these questions around the interoperability and wanting to de-risk your project and your activities by making sure that there is this ongoing kind of case study of other organizations who've done similar things. How does the integration work? I've actually seen on a couple of instances, two ISVs on platform where the interoperability was so broken that they've actually ended up having to take the data out, reprocess it in a third-party system like an Informatica or something, and then bring it back in, which is a travesty, bearing in mind it's all sharing the same data model. Okay. And then finally, that whole kind of risk analogy, the more ISVs that we have involved, the more individual companies we have involved, the potential for risk increases. I know in my time when I was at Oracle for a number of years, one of the biggest plays that they would have around this is, everybody upgrades at slightly different times, and there's different versions and different trajectories for innovation that comes out. And how do you keep it constantly in balance? How do you make sure that you benefit from each individual vendor without one running away from another? Okay, and so thinking about that, we're trying to create through Project Unite something that says, well, okay, wouldn't it be great if we could, buy a set of solutions where all of those answers, all of those questions were answered? And so that got us to thinking, well, that's great. We can go off and create lots of different relationships, which is, my head of alliances, Matt Bray, does this very effectively. You've got one organization and another. And the extent of most of those relationships is just at an alliances level. Go and sign a referral agreement with each other, and we might have a couple of consulting firms that know each of our products. But that goes no way to answering some of those questions that happened before. We're not de-risking it. We're not proving out the integration. We're not showing the referenceability. We don't have a commonality of our roadmaps and our innovation. So Project Unite, kind of, one of the biggest challenges we were coming up with was, okay, how do we think about the level of that relationship? And the picture that came to our mind was one of DNA, okay, that says, as you as a customer, from buying an application to ultimately consuming it and using it to run your business day in and day out, how do we ensure that that alliance truly works? Okay, so this isn't a cartel of 4 vendors and will never expand, but the barrier to entry is pretty significant. Some of the things we've already talked about as the 4 of us is, if you've negotiated a really good discount or commercial relationship with one of the Project Unite members, the others will follow suit. You don't have to renegotiate it each time. Okay. We will look at our contracts, our license agreements, and understand where possible, if we can, to mirror the contractual terms in those agreements, so that when you're looking at it from a legal and risk standpoint, we would actually be able to highlight, using something like Spring CM, because actually that's their core capability around kind of legal contract management, those clauses which are stand out from each of the individual Project Unite partners, so that then you can spend a lot less time kind of doing the negotiations and understand where those commonalities are. We will have our marketing departments doing joint events with each other. We'll have our pre-sales people doing joint presentations. We were lucky enough the other day, we had Greg from Spring CM, who actually did a 20-minute demonstration of all 4 capabilities sat inside Salesforce. And I've been in the software industry about 20 odd years. I've never seen a pre-sales person who's able to present other companies' products in a compelling manner. I mean, my pre-sales people were impressed with his grasp of the features and functionalities within Xactly, for example. Our support organizations, even all the way back into our lead gen business. And we have people who phone us up, and actually if we were truly honest with ourselves as a software vendor, and we have this kind of Unite relationship, but somebody says to us, we've got a couple of things we're working on at the moment. We've got a CPQ challenge, and we've got a commissions challenge. In actual fact, for a lot of organizations, it would make sense to do CPQ first and kind of get the whole quoting and that process clean and right, and then look at driving the right behaviors through the commissions process, rather than doing it one way where you're driving a set of behaviors around how you used to do business, and then you change it and then you have to re-implement Xactly again. Okay, so it's having this sensitivity more about how you should be consuming the services, as opposed to us jockeying for first place and trying to grab your money and run on to the next project. So as you can see at the moment, there's 4 vendors up there currently. The thought is, and we used a jigsaw picture. There was I'm pretty sad. I'm of a generation where I got a jigsaw for Christmas. It's my first time I got bought a jigsaw rather than anything that's gadgetry or anything like that. I was quite upset. But ultimately, me and my wife, we enjoyed putting it together over one weekend. Okay, and I got to thinking about this and thought, if I knew that one piece of the jigsaw was missing, would I even start the jigsaw? Of course I wouldn't. It's demoralizing to, putting all of those out, and it was a 1,000-piece jigsaw set. It's a proper, with, I think it was a Monet, I think, because I'm not a big artist, but, it's a difficult one to do. And if at the end of it, one piece was missing, I'd be gutted, okay? And, I can't make jigsaw pieces. They're pretty difficult. But imagine, this is your business. This is kind of the technology basement of your business. You implement a number of pieces. You build your jigsaw. And then there's one piece missing. And you go out to 2,800 ISV partners. And you can't find one that kind of slots in nicely. So then you end up cutting pieces off the other pieces of the jigsaw around the edge of that, trying to make it fit. And ultimately then the power of, kind of the other ISVs kind of gets nullified to some extent. They don't work well together. And, you probably recognize most of these brands, but, and these organizations are in conversation with us about, getting to the point at which they can have that DNA level connection. And the fact they're on there means they're pretty well advanced in that. So to give a kind of another view of it, this is kind of the simplified view. We're trying to find ways to help you all come up with a kind of an easy to consume view of how this works. So we've come up with some ideas. We're thinking, on this side is more kind of commercial SMB. The other side is more enterprise. There's definitely a gray line that sits in the middle, and there are certain capabilities that span the whole piece. Regardless of size, they're pretty horizontal. I mean, New Voice Media, Zyme, and Data.com, we've kind of put those as platform pieces at the bottom. And then across the top is kind of that lead to cash process. So, where do people fit in, the lead to cash process? And as we fill this out, the vision ultimately over the next 9 to 12 months will be to have maybe different vertical versions of it, in sympathy for the specialist products that fit into life sciences, finance, consumer goods, retail, high-tech, manufacturing, so on and so forth. And then we'll also have eventually ones which are more designed for like VSMB, so very small business, and then ones which really do have that picture around enterprise. Okay. The point being, given that kind of that synchronicity between the businesses, it allows us again to kind of say, well, okay, you might already have steel brick. Well, what's the natural order of implementing those items? Well, maybe it is to do Spring CM first because you've got a contracting challenge. But then you know where we fit within that process. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. So what I'm going to do is to kind of bring that to light. And I know John, who was in the demo jam, one of my pre-sales people earlier, kind of did our product in 3 minutes, but we've got about 5 or 6. So there's a 4-minute video which is available on YouTube. You can have a look at it afterwards. I'm going to play it now, which is a vignette, if you will, of how the initial 4 founding partners kind of all work together. And I'm hoping sound comes through. If it doesn't, it's going to be a fairly quiet video.
What if you knew that your reps always pitch the right deal, close contracts faster, and their commissions check is error-free? What if your reps could do all of this without ever leaving Salesforce.com? The sales process hasn't changed. It is still quote to contract, to commission, to cash. Now there's an integrated technology to make that easier, faster, and more profitable. Imagine if you could get your sales team to always configure and pitch the best combination of products, using detailed product catalogs selected and routed automatically to the end client. With the integration of SteelBrick CPQ solution with Xactly and Send, Spring CM, and DocuSign, sales reps can easily build out a comprehensive, accurate quote without leaving Salesforce.com. Imagine if every penny spent on sales compensation actually drove behavior. The rep can now see how his quote will impact their commissions with the Xactly and Send estimator. Each change to the quote results in a change to the commission. Now, the rep wants to earn that commission. The quote from SteelBrick CPQ easily feeds Spring CM contract management and provides a system for managing changes, negotiations, and approvals. Better yet, the final contract can be sent automatically, and all signature needs are routed, tracked, and captured with DocuSign. The final signature is captured, contract is archived, and the billing process is automatically activated. The sales rep grabs their smartphone and opens Salesforce One. They click Xactly and Send, and see the commission from this deal added to their monthly earnings. The right deal, the right incentive, no delay in the contract or signature process, and everyone gets paid. That is the power of SteelBrick, Xactly, SpringCM, DocuSign, and Salesforce.com.
Did it far more eloquently than I would be able to do in a demo. But I think when you see that as a picture, you then see where the logic sits behind having that comprehensive lead to cash process that sits, very cleanly in terms of the desktop, the UI experience for your salespeople and for those in your organization. Knowing that it's been de-risked and these are, vendors at the top of their game. I should point out that, again, the 4 founding partners are all platinum level partners of Salesforce, and we all sit kind of in the Gartner Magic Quadrant in the top right-hand corner. And that's exactly what we're looking to do with the other vendors that we bring in. They will also be entrenched within the Salesforce environment. They'll be platinum level. Hopefully, as we expand it, we might get 1 or 2 golds in there. But they certainly are recognized as being, the top 1 or 2 or 3 players within their industry for capability. Okay. I finished exactly when I said I would do, so I'm very happy about that. I overran when I did my dry run. Any questions from the floor? This is kind of your event. I'm aware it's a community. I'm happy to field any of those now.